Hello, everybody. Welcome to FAQs on reservation. Reservation, that word. That's that word that creates discomfort in almost everybody with privilege. Even those who would understand caste and caste problems will say, but reservation. Is that fair? And reservation somehow makes people with caste privilege feel that they are victims. They are being pushed to the corners and their rights are being given away to people who don't, in their minds, deserve it. So let's just ask those questions. I have with me today Dr. Suraj Yengde. Suraj Yengde is one of India's leading scholars and public intellectuals. Named as one of the 25 most influential young Indians by GQ magazine and the most influential young Dalit by Z, Suraj is an author of the bestseller Caste Matters and co-editor of the award-winning anthology The Radical in Ambedkar. Caste Matters was recently featured in the prestigious Best Non-Fiction Books of the Decade list prepared by The Hindu. Suraj was a senior fellow at the Harvard Kennedy School. He holds a research associate position with the Department of African and African American Studies and is also a non-resident fellow at the Hutchins Center for African and African American Research at Harvard University. Suraj has published over 100 essays, articles, and book reviews in multiple languages in the field of caste, race, ethnicity studies, and labor migration in the global south. Currently, he's involved in developing a critical theory of Dalit and Black studies. Welcome, Suraj.
Love you, brother. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So I'm going to just get in there and ask you those questions that we have heard so often. So the first question, and the most commonly asked questions, shouldn't merit be the ultimate criteria? Would you trust a doctor who has come through the reservation route with your life?
Oh, absolutely. No doubt about it. Because the doctor is being tested and not based on reservation when the doctor enters the medical school. They give the same exam. They sit for the same viva voce. They do the same practicals and they pass. Reservation is only when you need a foot into the institution. Once you are in, you're on your own. Many a times, student is victimized because the professors are belong to the communities who have almost a historical memory of violence that they want to impose again, and there is this tenacity of having an attitude of jealousy and incompetence looks through, especially applied for Dalit and Adivasi, and in many cases now OBC students as well. So merit is something that is very arbitrary. Merit is not one thing. If it's the numerical scores that you make by remembering what 3 hours of examination you gave, if that demonstrates merit, then I think monkeys who are trained to remember and regurgitate, even donkeys. We used to have an exhibition called Pannalal. Pannalal was a donkey, one of the smartest donkey. Pannalal should be the most meritorious person, because that's not how merit is tested. Merit is tested through various criteria, and one of the criteria is examination, but there are other factors: your socioeconomic background, your individual competence in different fields, and this is very clear when you apply for U.S. admissions. They just don't look at your GRE scores; they look at all other factors, and that's where the leadership qualities and all of that make. Now, the people who look only at numerical scores don't have any of the others. They lack there. That's why they want to hold on to only numerical scores. And that numerical score is very much making a Brahmin person. Brahmins from childhood are taught Vedas and mantras, and they keep on, reciting it day and night as their ritual, and thinking about it and almost kind of indulging into this practice. What happens when you go to exam? You are used to mugging up. It's kind of rote learning, and you just vomit in this examination, the answer sheet. However, Merit cannot be tested on standalone category. Merit needs to be reflected with the society.
Hmm.
Society is what makes merit. If you go to China, Chinese students, for example, who come to America, I mean, if you look at the GRE score, they are like, you know, rocket high. I mean, I had a student from China. She came to study and she spoke American English. Like she spoke like American. I said, how come? She said, I took training of English for 5 years. So what that means is that can be acquired. It's not a some alone game. But what we should appreciate is merit is not sacrificed. Merit is tested throughout the career of the student, not only in their class, but also in other activities. And if you're belonging from the reserved category, there are much more harsher rules applied to you, and much more harsher mirrors that are being shown to you. And within that system, you still excel. That means that's an extraordinary merit that one can see demonstrated.
I just want to push you on that. On the harsher criteria, can you elaborate that point on the harsher criteria for the people who come through the reserved list?
First of all, if you are a reserve category student, if you belong from one of those, you are automatically inferiorized. You're already told, you're already marked. In fact, a friend of mine who's now a secretary in Andhra Pradesh government, he told me when he went to Lal Bahadur Shastri, they already marked. Someone kind of made a remark. Oh, you came from reservation, and he said he carried that burden until his life. He's now 30 years approximately in service now. He still says, Suraj, I still feel like I should consult the policy that I make from a non-Dalit candidate, because that's the kind of violence, as I was saying, is the criteria, and it gets much harsher because then there are extra rules that are applied for a student, which normal Savarna students don't have to. First is the culture, the echo chamber that you operate in. Your gods are celebrated. Your culture is, your teachers are from the same community. You most likely have the same kind of a caste lingo, which you kind of vibe with each other. Whereas these students feel outcasts. You go into hostels. The hostels are arranged according to caste groups. According to roll numbers are allocated according to the caste criteria. That itself is much harsher. It's not a democratic experiment. It's already distinguishing. And then the atrocities of their professors who are not polite, they are hostile. They are dronacharyas looking for the next eklavya to be sacrificed. And by that standards, what they do is they mock the students. They don't encourage the students. Now, I have my personal experience. I was in law school in India, and my teachers, very few, if at all, encouraged. And then these were mostly belonging from progressive, outlook, even if they were Savarna, and many of them were Dalits who had this attitude. But many of them, others, would mock, laugh down upon, would tell you, you don't do that, you just do this. And they would not encourage, or they would not promote for internships, or not write good recommendation letters. I have a student here at Harvard University. He's doing PhD. He's a Dalit. He was in JNU. A Brahmin professor who taught him, he asked him, sir, can you write recommendation? He wrote 2-line recommendation letter. Can you imagine that kind of harshness? So not only that, and then the final thing is, you have to go through that Agni Pariksha almost every time. You have to demonstrate your smartness, because you have to cross over the line of inferiority, but also you have to be more visible, more noticeable. And how do you do that when the arrows are pointing against you? Irrespective of all of this, when the students pass with good grades and make their career, who is more meritorious?
Beautifully said, Suraj. Thank you so much. So this is again a very often asked question, the creamy layer question, if I can place it that way. Of course, there should be reservation, but surely not for children from rich SC, ST parents. They grew up with as much privilege as we did.
And I kind of understand where the sentiment is coming from, and I partly agree with that too. But that's not the question for the Savarnas to worry about. If they're almost like all of a sudden they're benevolent. Oh, we want to give reservations to poor Dalit. I mean, if you're so concerned about that, then there's very much more. I can give you extra work if you're really interested in doing some work. There's always been a debate within the Dalit community about this. Now, unfortunately, we don't have a data. I can tell you anecdotally as to how many of personally my friends who are doing well off have never availed of or sent their children to reservation. And these are mostly people living in posh quarters and have a life that they say I'm sending my child to a good private school, and I don't want my child to and also there is a sense of I don't want my child to feel that he is any way lower, because this kind of carrying a reservation is not just getting a foot in. It's also like being responsible for something you have not done, being judged by the metrics that someone else placed on. So it's more tension, and many reservation students don't claim their caste unless they are really Ambedkarites. Many prefer to stay mum. Uh, at MIT there was a Rajasthani Dalit, smart boy doing excellent research, like phenomenal, but he would very have this kind of a because it was injected in him. So about having said that, reservation is meant to provide representation so that there is an equal representation in that classroom. How would you like, Krishna, for example, you sit in a class, went to Brahmin school, graduated, went to engineering school, also Brahmins, graduated, then went to job, also Brahmin. I mean, you're not learning anything new. You're most likely having the stale black and white experience. How about add more colors? Let's rub shoulders. Classroom is probably the only space in India that has the potential to challenge caste, because people from across caste can sit same table. Of course, the ranking might now play, but that's an opportunity for us to now know each other, talk to each other, share our experiences. But again, there we have North India, South India divide.
Yeah.
The kind of discrimination North Indians impose on South Indians for their color, and we all have that kind of a very crude epithets used. In spite of that, the conduit of rich Dalits should not get. To my personal knowledge, now I don't have data to support because there is no research on that, as to how many second generation or third generation affluent Dalit children have availed of reservation. Even if they did, I think they actually helped the government from demonstrating its failures, because if there is no SC/ST, that means government is not doing enough. That's why there is a quota. That's why there is that's why it's meant for different caste communities to share. And if you are representing, what you're effectively doing is you're actually strengthening the quorum of the class. You're actually providing much more liberty to our thinking. And final point, the rich SC/ST kind of discussion that always takes place. It's not the class rich SC/ST, it's the caste rich SC/ST. That's a very fundamental difference we have to understand. People are not worried about them being rich and all. These are what? First generation, second generation rich people. What do you mean by rich? What do you compare it with? Oh, because they have a government and a service. If the government service goes, what do they have? They have no land. They have no enormous savings, and that's the only job they have. And because they are in job, they get the government facilities. That's all they do. They have nothing else to fall back on. So let us also remove the myth of this rich SC/ST, or because what happens once you lose a job? Where you gonna fall back on? So there is a clear view of examining this topic, and I think especially students who go to colleges and schools and universities should be able to do this more creatively than just shifting the blame on something of their own incapacities.
Yeah, and I think you make a very valid point of who should worry about this, and who should be asking the question about this, right? It's a very important point, right? And this is a conversation, as you said, within the Dalit community, and for data to emerge and answers to emerge from that. That's so true. The next question. Again, this has come up, I think, more now because of this entire reservation on the economic criteria. And the question is simple. Why can't reservation fundamentally be just on economic criteria? Isn't a poor Dalit and the poor upper caste the same?
No, they're not. Unfortunately, I wish it was the same. I really wished, because we'll have much more interesting conversation on that then, and in fact, if that was the case, poor SCST and poor upper caste would be partners. Where are they? They are not together. They don't share the meal. They don't share the space. They don't fight for their rights. There's nothing. There's no. If you have a shared victimhood, you come together. Why don't we see a mass movement of poor dominant caste people and poor SC, and OBCs join together? It doesn't happen. Why? Because it's not the question of poverty. It's about how do I retain my status, and I don't want to align anything to do with this. People, in fact, in Maharashtra, where I come from, they even add a hyphenated surname extra to show I might be poor, but I belong to this caste. Like they add extra layer of name. It's almost like this English, aristocracy. They have two surnames, there's hyphen, because
Yeah.
they want to show that they are the supreme. And our feudal guys have figured it out very well. And I think in this kind of a passage of where is rich and where is poor, the economic criteria of reservation is already existing.
Hmm.
They made it more prominent with the economically weak section, 10% reservation, which is actually giving them 60% reservation, if you will. It's quite luxurious. In spite of that, you got reservation. No, you were saying economic criteria. You got it now. Why do you then now put your feet in someone else's mouth to say that means you don't want a poor person or a person who's deserving to progress? You don't believe in the idea of collective nationhood. You believe in the idea of caste nationhood. And caste nationhood means you will just look after your own interest. That means you're not invested in the idea of country, which really takes us to a different domain of you being perhaps a questionable a nationalist of some sort. And I say nationalist in a liberal term. I don't say in a term that is used in today's lingo. So the economic criteria has always been there, and economic criteria also applies within Dalits. You see, understand, the point is there always has. I mean, the framers of this policy were not like ignorant about these topics, right? We didn't think of this. Huge contentious debates happening in Constituent Assembly, but also outside Constituent Assembly. Political Congress Party, for example, through its public platform, All India Scheduled Caste Federation, and many other Lohia and other folks, socialists, communists even, were kind of thinking about this. So that thing is taken care of.
Thank you very much for that. So this is again a kind of an extension to the question of reservations not helping people with merit. So the question is this: in some states in India, the general merit category has hardly 1/3 of seats, with the rest all being reserved. So why am I? This is being asked by an upper caste student. Why am I being penalized for just being born as upper caste? Isn't that unfair?
And I understand, and I pity the ignorance that this dominant caste communities have. I mean, one should really, it's a profound ignorance, and I think it's a chosen ignorance. It's not an alternative ignorance. It's very fixated one. Now, the student, if at all knows anything about census, would then go and investigate into what is the percentage of my community in India. Once he or she or they would look at their numbers, they would see, okay, I am XYZ percentage. How much percent I already have? You will notice you have more. Like the general category in its strictest terms is approximately 22%. If you add all of the other groups as well, they have reservation 51%. They have twice that. So that means there is already, Supreme Court has granted twice reservation. The fight is only between SC, ST, OBC. They are fighting among themselves because that's the competition. They are not crossing over into your places. because they are given what is their share. You are given twice and sometimes thrice the share of what you should own. So instead of having a grievance against SC, ST, or OBC, have a grievance against your own caste people, because many of them are going to the same college. That's the competition. If you don't get a seat, it is not because SC, ST, OBC is taking your seats. They already have their quota. They are taking from their quota. You are not getting seat because someone from your community is taking your seat. So if you wanna create a parity system, you should actually create more equality within your own community, because that's where the problem is. And see, my heart goes out to the poor Brahmins, because see, the poor Brahmins and the Pandits, they are the lower caste Brahmins. 1500 plus subcastes of Brahmins exist across India. Yet only the few dominant caste rule. Let's forgive Iyer Iyengar complex for a moment. Even North India, Tuvedi, Drivedi, Chaturvedi, the distinction. And the one who is facing the wrath of public is the poor Brahmin. So a poor Brahmin needs to be supported, and I'm all for it. And the poor Brahmin needs to be supported not by identifying a Dalit as a responsible person, but a poor Brahmin is victimized because someone else from their community has taken that place. They have colleges, they have banks, they have institutions, they have money, they have been money lending caste for so long. We need to tell our youngsters from the dominant caste communities, from the general category, that there has already been a structure of equal distribution. If you are not equally benefiting, it is not because someone has taken your place. Your place was already for you. Someone else within your community, especially the poor perhaps, is now coming and getting education. There was one time Brahmin, especially lower caste, wouldn't go to school. They were not. They were just house tutored. Central India and all, it was not allowed of all the rules, rigidities and all. But now they're getting into colleges, right? They are looking at it. So we need to create this a prospect. What we do is instead we find out the poorest, the victim, and then we make a case that's why we should. The elites of each caste group are the ones who are responsible for this.
Well, another extension to this question is, what about these cutoffs in colleges? Cutoffs for the general category are at 99%. Some universities 98%. Is that even fair?
Again, see, that's the thing. The cutoff list is because of your own groups. It's not because of SC, STs. See, the point is, nobody is taking your seat. The seats that SC, STs are taking are within their own seats. If they are given 16% and Adivasis are 8%, they are competing against their own quotas. They are not coming into crossing over your quotas. Of course, now many Dalits now also within that, like, you will see the IAS toppers and we will see the entrance examination toppers and so forth are Dalits, and in many cases also Adivasis kind of joining the stream of merits. So the cutoff is more, as I said again, because people from the general community are also competing. Now, for example, Kshatriyas. Probably Kshatriyas are the comparatively most illiterate, census-wise, among the general category. When it comes to higher education standards, when I say illiterate, I use it in a very loose sense, in a rhetorical sense. But when it comes to Kshatriyas don't have like a standard representation in majority of, you will talk about this kind of a clever business, clever vocations. They've been always doing this other kind of handling jobs and becoming Bajrang Dal type of people. But here, what happens is, a Baniya, for example, an Agarwal Baniya from Rajasthan, and then there is a Baniya, Jain Baniya from Karnataka. Their competing standards they're competing against the same standards. Because both are India, but both life experience different. This is South Indian, exiled from North India, came, Jain. That one is, Agarwal, very much rooted in the Marwad culture. So what we are seeing here is then the dissatisfaction among these Baniya groups, or even this Brahmin groups. They want to express their frustration. And what they do is they find the scapegoat because someone else have wrongly told them these are the people who you should blame for. That is not the correct way of looking. You should blame for, like, I see, if we have a problem in our country, we blame Pakistan. Such a comedy thing. We have problem because we are having problem amongst ourselves. And I think in quota, it's very clear. That's a quota. And quota means there is this kind of a block.
And I think also you made an important point in between about everybody wanting to go to just that same college or that same place, and therefore actually depriving people in need within the community itself for themselves access to that kind of a college. I mean,
can I give an example?
Yeah,
I have an example of a Brahmin community, not Brahmin, sorry, Caste community. And I know this because a person shared this experience with me. So I've not seen a person, Caste scholar, shared with me that the community had a kind of a local scholarship for their supporting each other. Excuse me, it was Bania. Sorry. So the Bania community kind of got together and gave like a scholarship to send the students. Now what happened is more and more students, because they were giving scholarships, and this person, irrespective of him being smart and he scored well, he was deprived the opportunity because his father was not the influential businessman.
Correct.
Right. So and so of course finally he ended up going to foreign country, and look at the tears. You go to America and cry. but what happened in this case is, like, he was deprived the opportunity also because within the same group there were more, and people wanted to go to that specific college only. Exactly. And go to other colleges also, no, like the way we and I think we might have more opportunities there.
Absolutely. Thank you. So this is a question that connects religion, converting again with reservation. So the question is this: if a Dalit converted to Christianity because of caste persecution within the Hindu community, why should this Dalit be given reservation after conversion?
I mean, they don't give up. They are not anymore not Dalits, right? They're still Dalits there because there is a Brahmin there, someone who's willing to identify the caste kind of system. So that the reservation is given based on caste, not on religion. And caste, unfortunately, in this, and in fact, many Dalit Christians benefited. Especially they benefited from colonial education. They got English education, and you will see especially coastal Dalits, especially on the eastern side of Dalits, and also in Tamil Nadu and all.
Tamil Nadu, yes.
They got this great kind of, comparatively compared to like hinterland Dalits like us, like Maharashtra and all. We were not having much access to that. So, excuse me, they benefited, and I think the question is about those Dalit Christians who have a constitutional right because of their own caste distinction. Now, what they did was they wanted to maintain a Hindu majority. Maintain Hindu majority, many Dalits are still identified as Hindu when in fact they are not Hindu. In the caste certificate, when you write, they mention, like, my caste certificate mentions me as Hindu. when none of my family is Hindu or nothing to do with that. But the caste certificates, and it was made in especially 1980s. Now it has made for Buddhists to become qualified. But many other kind of calculation is not made in this. The estimation is not made in this liberal way of looking at caste as a parity concept. Why Dalit Christians, and in this case also Dalit Muslims, should get
exactly. Yes,
it's because they are being discriminated by their own religious supremacists, their own dominant caste people. And Muslims and Christians, whoever you talk about in a majority of them are from this same land. They converted, right? They are not like and so somebody converted. So it's not only one group that converted. There's also many groups converted, and unfortunately, especially in the Catholic tradition in India, that as much as I know, I am not an expert in that. I know about Tamil Nadu example, where repeatedly the bishops are sending memorandums about caste to the Pope, to Vatican, to say like this is the problem, and of course we know legendary Catholic priests, fathers who were progressive in their thinking, contributed to the people's struggle, and there are names, and they belong to the dominant caste, by the way. Yes. So and they have been supporter of reservation. So why should they get is because their caste experiences doesn't go away. They are still made to
Correct.
feel inferior. They're still made to live the subhuman life. And when they converted to Christianity, they converted for the very reason that they want reservation for.
Hmm.
That is to have an equal opportunity to get basic education. They don't want to do this to just only, there also a material kind of interest in addition to spiritual. And final reason is that the idea of reservation is caste based, and we need to understand based on that idea of discrimination and exclusion. And if for example, the Christian institutions in India, Saint something something, Saint Stevens, and all that saints, they like Kanchailaya says, they produce Hindu nationalists. Like this BJP's JP Nadda is educated in this. So it's interesting, right? Like
Yeah.
this is how the caste dynamics work. And again, then there is this reproduction of a certain kind of religions. And so we need to. So that's why I'm saying when we critique, it's not Hinduism only. We also
Yes.
critique other religions. And when we critique, we also would like to get social justice and economic equality provided here.
Absolutely. The last question, and this is again something that is often asked. Reservations were necessary when India gained freedom. But how long are they just going to go on? Even Ambedkar said after 10 years they should be removed.
So there are two things that are misconceptions we should address here. First is Ambedkar actually later in his speech, he actually said it was Vallabhbhai Patel who was pushing for it, and he said I refused to do that for 10 years, and I'm gonna provide citations. Actually, Narendra Jadhav, he edited Ambedkar. He actually translated the speeches of Ambedkar in English, and so in that he mentions that I was not advocating for that. The idea of reservation for 10 years was for political. Political reservation, Dalits don't want. The parties keep giving them.
Yeah.
Dalits don't want, because political reservation creates more, as Kanchiram would call chamcha, or Ambedkar called them stooge. So if there is no political reservation, there will be, because we have a first past the post system. So you really have to rely on the political parties' patronage to thrive. Reservation, how long it should go, we should look at the statistics. And I invite people to pay attention to this. Krishna, be with me. 93% Indian labor force works in informal sector, unorganized sector, shops, hawking, all this informal. Only 7% is organized, and of that 3% is private. So 4% is actually the space of contestation here. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
So why don't we pay attention to what's happening to the 93% where there is on a reservation? If you are a baniya, you are re-inheriting the business. If you are a landlord, you are inheriting the business of agriculture. If you belong to a priest, you are inheriting the business. If you are the son or daughter of some industry, you are inheriting the business. Much of the informal sector actually, apart from industries, is put into informal sector.
Correct.
Even the business kind of thing that we should have, they put into it. And of that, 89% are scheduled caste, scheduled tribes. Informal majority workers are in. So we are concerned about less than 10% SC, STs collectively. That means 10% SC, STs threaten the entire structure of Savarna intelligentsia. What about 90%? If we come all of us together, then maybe there will be a chaos. So only one can really handle the genius of 10%, right? And of this 10%, it's not an easy game. Now let us go to private sector. There's no reservation there.
Correct.
And then you will see, and unfortunately there are reports about which caste communities. Again, Economic and Political Weekly, especially Lakshmi Iyer, Tarun Khanna, and Ashutosh Varshini, they did this survey, and they published in Economic Political Weekly. It's a very good tabulated form. Non-agricultural sector employment. Within agricultural sector, there is a certain, for example, if you are an owner of a big farmland, if you're a marginal farmer, if you are doing the bag or orchards, There are different and it's a very, an Indian census, by the way, is a salute. They do very minute, but unfortunately they don't calculate the percentage of savarnas,
Yes.
because we don't know how much savarnas are existing in India. We are using a very old, very old data. We are having these problems to face. We should advocate for census. What they did is, cleverly, they only calculated scheduled caste and scheduled tribe, because they say we want to give them policy. We don't need to calculate others. It's wrong. We need to consider. So for how long it will go is a very interesting question. I think it will go as long as we don't really create a society of equal representation.
Hmm.
Unless there is no representation, people will still try to get there. And this is education and job reservation. Now they're also asking for promotion, and there's already it approved. Political reservation we should contest against. Dalits are contesting, and I think nobody is favoring political reservation, because then that's when I think there is a possibility that Dalits actually will then unite. But Dalits are a minority, Adivasis are a minority. We live in we don't have this presidential election where you vote for one person and you get number of seats. That's why in this extremely complex system, what we need to do is we need to think about how we distribute equally amongst everyone, so the privileged doesn't become more powerful.
Correct.
Doesn't mean I'm saying privileged should not get their share.
Yeah.
We should distribute in a way that doesn't make the privilege more powerful. That's my closing statement.
So true. Thank you so much, Suraj, for taking time and answering again these set of often repeated questions that just don't seem to go away. But I do hope that this putting together, collecting them together, and answering each one of them at least is one step forward. It is there for everybody to listen to again, understand again, and read more and learn more. And that's the only way we can progress together. Thank you so much, brother.
Thank you, brother Krishna. Thank you
Take
so
care.
much.
Thank you
Take
so
care.
much. Thanks a
Bye-bye.
lot.
To receive instant updates on all videos from The Wire, click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon. Pay to support independent journalism. Click the link in the description and choose the amount you want to pay.